Okay, so let's unpack this one. You've got these married writer-directors, right? Known for pretty intense art house films.
Mm-hmm. Hélène Cattet and Bruno Forzani. Very distinct style.
Exactly. And they decide to cast a legendary French porn star in their movie Let the Corpses Tan.
Which, on the surface, sounds, well, surprising, to say the least.
Right. It definitely made me stop and think, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, and that's the really fascinating part, this kind of intersection of seemingly very different cinematic worlds. You have these filmmakers with this unique, often challenging aesthetic,
Mm-hmm.
making a choice that, feels a bit out of left field initially.
Totally. And that's what we're really digging into today. This wasn't just some like random stunt.
No, not at all.
It's about Marilyn Jess, who was a huge name in French adult cinema, and how her whole legacy, her career, somehow connected with Cattet and Forzani's vision.
And we've got some great sources to work with here. There's an essay from Cattet and Forzani themselves explaining how they saw it.
Yeah, plus detailed entries from places like Babypedia, the Art and Popular Culture Encyclopedia, covering Marilyn Jess's life, her career.
Her profiles on Famous Fix, Pornzog 2,
Yeah.
her Wikipedia page, obviously, and even a description of a book about her cult films.
Mm-hmm.
So quite a lot to draw on.
Definitely. So I guess our mission here for you, listening, is to figure out why. Why these specific filmmakers chose Marilyn Jess.
Exactly. And maybe what that tells us about, bigger ideas,
Mhm.
like how the body is shown in film, challenging taboos,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe giving recognition to contributions to film that often get, well, ignored.
Okay, so let's start with the filmmakers, Cattet and Forzani. They mentioned that a big theme in their work, like right from the beginning, even in their early animated shorts,
Yeah.
has been the body, specifically the body as an object of desire or sometimes destruction.
Right. And that tracks with their style. Their whole approach seems really tied to the physical form. They've talked about using the body almost like a graphic element in their animation.
And then when they moved into live action, they noticed something kind of interesting.
What was that?
They found that actors often focus really heavily on the, let's say, intellectual side of the role.
Ah, okay. So maybe less on the pure physicality,
Kind of, yeah. Almost disconnected from the physical stuff sometimes.
which raises that whole question about performance, doesn't it? Is it all just thinking your way into a character, or is there this crucial, physical dimension?
For them, it seems like the physical was super important.
Yeah, clearly.
They even started working with modern dancers early on in their short films.
Oh, interesting. Why dancers?
Because they loved that precise physicality, the way dancers just get choreography and movement.
That makes total sense when you think about their films. They're so stylized, almost choreographed themselves, right?
Exactly. The visuals are so tied up with gesture and movement.
Okay, so then comes their first feature, Amore, which they say is about exploring physical desire, fantasy.
Yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting for our story today. They made a very specific, deliberate choice. They cast French porn actresses from the 90s.
Wow. Okay. And their reason.
Well, this is pretty direct. They felt these performers perfectly knew the body
Knew the body.
and, crucially, perfectly knew how to show female pleasure on screen. I mean, that was their job.
Right. It's quite a statement. It's a bold perspective, isn't it? Seeing them as professionals with a specific understanding of physical expression.
That maybe, classically trained actors wouldn't have in quite the same way.
Yeah, it wasn't about acting pleasure intellectually. It was about
Mhm.
this practical, almost mechanical understanding from their work, the visual language of it.
But there's a nuance here. The filmmakers also said these performers often saw themselves as performers, not necessarily actresses.
Okay. What's the distinction they were making there?
Well, it seems like they felt their expertise was in the live sexual performance that got caught on video. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily in traditional filmmaking with storyboards, mise en scène, all that stuff.
Got it. So maybe they lacked a bit of confidence on a conventional film set.
Apparently so, yeah. It points to this maybe divide between different kinds of performance and perhaps a sort of hierarchy in the film world, different skills, different experiences.
Sure. Okay, so then moving on to Let the Corpses Tan, how did Marilyn Jess come into the picture?
It was kind of serendipitous, actually. Hélène Cattet just met her at a party in Brussels.
Just like that. Wow.
Yeah, and around the same time, Bruno Forzani was on a film festival jury with Gerard Kikoin.
Kikoin. He
Yeah.
directed Jess a lot, right?
Exactly. So these connections just sort of happen. It wasn't like they put out a casting call for porn stars.
Right. Not a standard process at all.
And here's where it gets even more surprising, maybe. When they actually talked to Jess and Kikoine,
Yeah.
the conversation wasn't really about porn. It was about, quote, real cinema.
Real cinema? Like what?
Like storyboarding, editing, sound design, stuff like that, and how revolutionary their own work had been in its way.
Okay, now that is crucial. So Cattet and Forzani weren't just seeing them as adult film figures.
Yeah.
They saw them as people who were actually like cinematic innovators in their own sphere.
Precisely. They saw them as rebels, people who broke sexual taboos in France, pioneers who changed things by showing sex without censorship.
That completely reframes it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
They're seeing counterculture figures using film to push back against norms.
totally. Cattet and Forzani even drew a parallel between Jess and Kikoine and characters in the book Let the Corpses Tan is based on.
Oh yeah, which ones?
Luce, the subversive artist, and Max Bernier, the writer. Characters who kind of stand against the established order through their art.
So the initial thought might have been to actually cast Jess and Kikoine as those characters.
Seems like it, yeah. As a way to kind of honor their own artistic rebellion, their impact.
But that's not what happened in the end, right?
No. Ultimately, they decided they needed to focus on the whole ensemble cast, the overall energy.
Okay. But they still wanted Jess involved somehow.
Exactly. They still wanted to include her.
Which leads to the twist.
The twist. They cast her as the cop.
Who was a man in the original novel.
Right. So this person who spent her career breaking societal rules ends up playing a symbol of law and order in their film.
That is pretty brilliant, actually. A really clever, ironic way to bring her in.
Yeah, acknowledges her history, but puts her somewhere completely unexpected. So, okay, let's dive into Marilyn Jess herself. Who was this rebel?
Well, born Dominique Troyer, Paris, 1959.
Right. And she used a bunch of names, didn't she? Marilyn Wilde, Platinette.
Yeah, the sources mostly line up on the birth date and the aliases. Platinette is interesting, though. Later became Patinette.
Where did that come from?
Her platinum blonde hair, apparently. And she was also a muse for Harakiri, the satirical magazine.
Ah, okay. So how did she get into the adult film world? Was it always the plan?
Doesn't sound like it. It was kind of a chance thing. Yeah. She took some risque photos from a Greek holiday to get developed.
Yeah.
And a photographer noticed them.
Huh. Just like that. A classic discovered story, but in a slightly different context.
Pretty much. From there, it was apparently quite quick. Suggestive photos, then lingerie modeling, then into porn films. Debut was 1977, using the name Marilyn Wilde.
Collegienne, à tout faire. But then she changed it to Marilyn Jess.
Yeah, apparently the Marilyn Wilde name was already taken by an American performer. So she picked Jess from a clothing store sign, believe it or not.
Really? That's kind of funny. Just practicalities of the business, I guess. Needed a unique name.
Seems so. Anyway, her big breakthrough role, the one that really made her a star, was in 1980, La Femme Objet.
Right, the object woman, where she played that idealized woman, kind of a robot.
Exactly. Created by a scientist. That film seems to have been a real turning point.
And it basically established her as the new big name in French adult cinema, right?
Yeah.
After Brigitte Lahaie retired from porn.
Yeah, she kind of stepped into that leading role.
And she was busy, like incredibly prolific. Wikipedia says over 83 films. Famous Fix suggests maybe even 134.
Wow. That's a huge body of work. Really underlines how central she was during that late 70s, mid-80s period.
Definitely not a minor player. She was the star for a while there. There's an interesting detail, though, in one of the sources, the Art and Popular Culture Encyclopedia. It says she only actually did one real anal scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah, used a body double for others, which, you know, might challenge some assumptions people have about performers in that genre.
Sure. It's a reminder that even within that industry, performers had lines they wouldn't cross, preferences. It wasn't all the same for everyone.
Right, and she wasn't only in porn either. She had a role in Emmanuel the Fifth.
Okay.
And she was even in a music video for a song called Idée Noire.
Interesting. So some crossover appeal or at least recognition in broader French pop culture at the time?
Seems like it. Then, after she left porn films, apparently in the early 90s, partly due to feels about HIV,
Right. That was a major concern then.
she moved into doing Parisian peep shows for a while.
Which was a fairly common move for performers leaving film.
Right.
Yeah. A different kind of performance environment.
And personally, she married a porn director, Didier Philippe Girard, also known as Michel Barney, back in '84. They have 2 kids.
Okay.
And now, according to several sources, she actually sells paintings in an art gallery.
Wow. From porn star to art dealer. That's quite the journey.
Isn't it a huge shift? Now, thinking about her impact, Seamus Fix mentions that nickname, Platinette, came with this reputation for being really lively and natural.
Hmm.
And that apparently helped create more sympathy or understanding for the profession itself.
That's interesting. It kind of humanizes her, right?
Yeah.
Challenges the stereotypes. Her personality obviously connected with people.
Yeah. And the fact that there's literally a hardcover book called The Cult Films of Marilyn Jess
Right.
that says a lot about her lasting impact, her recognition now as like a cult film figure.
Definitely. The existence of a book like that signals serious critical attention, moving beyond just labeling her. It looks at her work, her cultural significance.
Yeah, the description says it has essays, interviews, covers her work with directors, the photo novel she did, Harakiri, even making a film with Tracy Lords. Lots of unseen photos.
So a proper deep dive into her career and influence. And Pornzog describes her as a European star who really held her own against the American performers during the 80s video boom.
Highlights her blonde look, her natural body type, energetic performances.
Yeah, mentions films like Grand Prix, Paris Models, and notes that some of her European films even got dubbed and released in the U.S., like The Arrangement.
So she had international reach, a distinctive style that appealed even across the Atlantic.
Absolutely, a significant figure in that era.
Okay, so let's tie this all back together. Casting Marilyn Jess and Let the Corpses Tan. It really wasn't just some random grab attention move.
No, clearly not. It was a deliberate artistic choice, deeply connected to Cattet and Forzani's whole long-standing exploration of the body in their films.
Right, and more than that, it was also this clear nod, this recognition of Jess's own powerful presence on screen and her role as this cultural figure who, pushed back against norms about sex and how it's shown.
Yeah. For me, the big takeaway here is how this story connects these worlds, art house and adult film, that you might think are totally separate.
Right. It forces you, the listener, to maybe rethink how you define performance, what counts as art.
And the impact of people who push boundaries, even if their work is controversial or overlooked.
So when you understand why they cast her, you get this much richer picture of what filmmaking can be about, the layers of intention.
And these hidden histories within pop culture.
Exactly. So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. If a performer known mainly for one, let's say, genre, can bring such a compelling history and presence to something completely different, what other assumptions do we hold about the lines between different kinds of art, different kinds of performance, and who else is out there overlooked with a fascinating story we just haven't heard yet?